The Riverside Country Club was exactly the kind of venue my family loved, all polished marble crystal chandeliers, and the subtle but unmistakable aura of old money. My 30th birthday party was in full swing in the Oak Room, with 50 guests mingling over champagne and hors d'oeuvres that cost more per bite than most people spent on lunch. I stood near the bar, nursing a glass of sparkling water and watching my family hold court with their social circle. My outfit, dark jeans, a simple black sweater and comfortable flats, drew disapproving glances from the cocktail dress and heels crowd. "Alexis, seriously," my sister Victoria whispered harshly as she approached, her designer dress rustling with each step. "What are you wearing?" "Clothes," I replied simply, taking another sip of my water. "You look like you're going to a casual Friday at some office job," she continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "This is the Riverside Country Club. There are standards." My mother, Patricia, joined the conversation, her own perfectly tailored outfit complementing her equally perfect disapproving expression. "Alexis, honey, Victoria's right. This is your birthday party. Don't you want to look appropriate?" "I'm comfortable," I said. "Comfortable isn't the point," Victoria shot back. "You're embarrassing us. People are staring." She wasn't wrong about the staring. The other guests, mostly my parents' friends and business associates, along with Victoria's social circle, had been shooting glances in my direction all evening. But not for the reasons Victoria thought. "Look," Victoria continued, clearly building up steam, "I know you're going through a rough patch financially, but we could have lent you something decent to wear. Or at least given you money to buy an appropriate outfit." My rough patch. That's what my family had decided to call my current life situation. I'd been deliberately vague about my work for the past 2 years, telling them only that I was consulting in the tech sector, and letting them draw their own conclusions about my success level. Those conclusions, apparently, included assuming I couldn't afford proper party attire. "Victoria's right," chimed in my cousin Bradley, appearing at her elbow with his trademark smug expression. "I mean, I get that not everyone can be successful, but there's no reason to broadcast it." Bradley worked in finance and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone about his 6-figure salary and luxury lifestyle. He'd been particularly condescending toward me ever since I'd declined his offer to put in a good word for me at his firm. "Maybe next year we should just do a family dinner instead," my mother suggested diplomatically. "Something more intimate." Translation: something where my inappropriate presence wouldn't embarrass them in front of their friends. "Or," Victoria said, warming to her theme, "maybe Alexis could make an effort to dress like she belongs in adult society. I mean, how hard is it to buy one decent outfit?" Several nearby guests had stopped their conversations to listen, clearly enjoying the family drama. I recognized most of them wealthy families from the country club circuit, business leaders from the city's elite circles, politicians and their spouses. "You know what?" Victoria said, her voice getting louder and more animated. "I'm tired of making excuses for you. We all are. It's time you stopped embarrassing this family and got your act together." "Victoria," my father Robert said warningly, but she was on a roll now. "No, Dad, this needs to be said. Look around this room. Everyone here has built something meaningful with their lives. Everyone here understands what it means to be successful, to contribute to society, to dress appropriately for social occasions." She gestured broadly at the assembled guests. "And then there's Alexis showing up in clothes that probably came from a discount store, with no real job, no real prospects, no apparent understanding of how to function in the adult world." The room had gone noticeably quieter, with more people openly watching our conversation now. "I mean," Victoria continued, clearly enjoying her audience, "at what point do we stop enabling this behavior? At what point do we say enough is enough?" My Uncle Charles, Victoria's father-in-law, nodded approvingly. "Victoria's got a point. Sometimes tough love is what people need to hear." "Exactly," Bradley agreed. "Maybe if Alexis faced some real consequences for her choices, she'd be motivated to change." I finished my sparkling water and set the glass on a nearby table. "What kind of consequences did you have in mind?" "Well," Victoria said, clearly pleased that I was finally engaging, "maybe no more family events until you can show up appropriately dressed. Maybe no more financial help from Mom and Dad. Maybe it's time you learned to sink or swim on your own." "Financial help?" I asked. "Don't play dumb, Alexis. We all know you've been struggling. There's no shame in needing help, but there is shame in taking help and then not making any effort to improve your situation. The irony was almost overwhelming. My family had been so convinced of my failure that they'd apparently convinced themselves they'd been supporting me financially. In reality, I hadn't taken a penny from them in over 5 years. You know what? Victoria continued, clearly emboldened by the supportive murmurs from the crowd. I think we should make this official. No more invitations to family events, no more financial support, no more making excuses for you until you can prove you're serious about changing your life. I second that motion, Bradley said with a theatrical flourish. All in favor? Victoria asked, looking around at our assembled family members. Several hands went up, including my mother's, though she looked uncomfortable about it. Motion carried, Victoria announced triumphantly. Alexis, you're officially cut off until you get your act together. The room buzzed with whispered conversations as people processed what they'd just witnessed. I could see some guests looking uncomfortable with the public nature of the family intervention, while others seemed entertained by the drama. That's when I heard the commotion at the entrance to the Oak Room. Excuse me, sir, this is a private event. I could hear the country club's event coordinator saying to someone. I'm here for Alexis Chen's birthday party, came the reply in a familiar voice. I'm her business partner. My business partner. That would be David Kim, co-founder and CTO of our company Phoenix Technologies. David, who was probably worth more than everyone in this room combined. David, who had no idea he was about to walk into a family intervention about my supposed failure in life. I can check with the family about adding you to the guest list, the coordinator was saying. That won't be necessary, I called out, moving toward the entrance. He's with me. David walked into the Oak Room with his characteristic energy, dressed in his usual casual style, jeans, sneakers, and a simple button-down shirt. Exactly the kind of outfit that had gotten me in trouble with Victoria. Happy birthday, boss, he said loudly, giving me a huge hug that lifted me off the ground. Sorry I'm late, the board meeting ran long. The room went silent. Boss. He called me boss. In front of 50 people who'd just watched my sister publicly disown me for being a failure. Board meeting. Victoria said weakly. David, oblivious to the tension in the room, continued enthusiastically. Yeah, the quarterly investors meeting. Great news, by the way, we're officially valued at $800 million now. The acquisition offer from Tech Global is still on the table, but I think we should hold out for the billion-dollar mark. If the room had been quiet before, it was dead silent now. 800 million, my mother whispered. David finally seemed to notice that everyone was staring at him. Oh, sorry, am I interrupting something? I can wait outside if you're in the middle of family time. No, I said calmly, you're not interrupting anything important. David, I'd like you to meet my family. Family, this is David Kim, my co-founder and CTO at Phoenix Technologies. Co-founder. Bradley croaked. Yeah, David said, extending his hand to Bradley with a friendly smile. Alexis and I started Phoenix 5 years ago. She had this incredible vision for AI-driven logistics optimization, and I had the technical background to make it happen. Best partnership I've ever had. He turned to Victoria. You must be Victoria. Alexis talks about you all the time. She's so proud of your interior design business. Victoria stared at him like he'd grown a second head. AI-driven logistics optimization, my father repeated slowly. Oh yeah, it's fascinating stuff, David said, clearly in his element now. Alexis identified this massive inefficiency in how companies manage their supply chains. We developed algorithms that can reduce shipping costs by up to 40% while improving delivery times. The demand has been incredible. How incredible? My Uncle Charles asked. Well, we're working with about 60% of the Fortune 500 companies now, David replied casually. Last quarter's revenue was around 97 million. This quarter's looking even better. I watched my family's faces as they processed this information. Victoria looked like she might faint. Bradley's mouth was hanging open. My mother was gripping her champagne glass so tightly I was worried it might shatter. Alexis, David continued, did you tell them about the Tech Global acquisition offer? Because I know you were excited about having the option to cash out if you wanted to focus on the new venture. New venture? My father managed to ask. Oh, it's brilliant, David said enthusiastically. Alexis wants to start a foundation focused on bringing technology education to underserved communities. She's already identified 12 cities where we could make a real impact. He pulled out his phone. Actually, I have some pictures from our site visit in Detroit last week. The community center we're partnering with is amazing. As David scrolled through photos explaining our plans for the foundation, I watched my family struggle to reconcile this new information with their assumptions about my life. I don't understand, Victoria finally said. If you're successful, why do you dress like I don't care about impressing people? I suggested. Well, yes. David laughed. Oh, that's classic Alexis. She says expensive clothes are just expensive distractions. She'd rather spend money on things that matter. Things that matter? My mother asked weakly. Like the scholarship fund she set up at the university, David said. Or the coding boot camp she sponsors for kids who can't afford traditional computer science education. Or the environmental initiatives Phoenix supports. He showed them his phone screen. This is from the groundbreaking ceremony for the solar farm we funded in Arizona. Alexis insisted on being there even though it meant flying back in time for a major client presentation. I could see the wheels turning in my family's heads as they tried to process this complete reversal of their understanding of my life. But you said you were consulting, Bradley said weakly. I am consulting, I replied. Phoenix Technologies is a consulting company. We consult with Fortune 500 companies about optimizing their logistics operations. When you said tech sector, Victoria said, we thought you meant, like, tech support or data entry or something. Why would you think that? I asked, genuinely curious. Because you never talked about being successful, my mother said. You never mentioned having money or building a company or working with major corporations. You never asked, I pointed out. You asked what I did for work and I told you I consulted in the tech sector. When you asked how it was going, I said it was going well. What else did you want to know? The painful truth was settling in around the room. My family hadn't bothered to ask follow-up questions because they'd assumed I wasn't worth asking about. David, meanwhile, was completely oblivious to the family drama and was now showing photos to some of the other guests, who were asking informed questions about our technology and business model. Oh, you work in supply chain management? David was saying to one of my father's business associates. You should talk to Alexis about Phoenix's services. We might be able to help optimize your operations. The man looked over at me with new interest. Your company handles supply chain optimization? Among other things, I said. We should set up a meeting, he said, pulling out his business card. I've been looking for solutions exactly like what your partner described. More guests began approaching and I found myself in several conversations about Phoenix Technologies, our services and our growth plans. These were the same people who'd been watching Victoria publicly humiliate me 20 minutes earlier. Victoria stood frozen in place, clearly struggling to process what was happening. Alexis, she said quietly, approaching me during a brief lull in conversations, I need to understand something. What's that? If you're this successful, why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were struggling? I considered how to answer that question honestly. Victoria, what did you assume about me when you saw me arrive tonight in jeans and a sweater? I assumed you couldn't afford better clothes. And when I told you I worked in tech consulting, I assumed it was some kind of entry-level position. And when I didn't talk about money or success or luxury purchases, I assumed you didn't have any money or success or luxury purchases. Right. So the question isn't why I didn't tell you about my success. The question is why you assumed I was a failure. Victoria looked stricken. I don't know. I do, I said gently. You assumed I was a failure because I don't perform success the way you expect successful people to perform it. What do you mean? I mean I don't wear expensive clothes to prove I can afford them. I don't talk about money to prove I have it. I don't name-drop clients to prove I'm important. You interpreted my lack of performance as evidence of failure. David rejoined our conversation having finished his impromptu networking session with the other guests. This is a great party, he said to Victoria. You really know how to put together an event. Alexis is lucky to have such a thoughtful sister. Victoria looked like she might cry. David, I said, Victoria was just asking why I don't talk more about Phoenix and our success. Oh, that's easy, David replied. Alexis says successful people don't need to announce their success because their work speaks for itself. She says if you're spending time convincing people you're successful, you're not spending time actually being successful. He grinned at me. Plus, she's always said that the best way to find out what people are really like is to let them assume you're not important. Shows you who treats people well regardless of status. The silence that followed was profound. My mother finally broke it. Alexis, honey, we owe you an enormous apology. Yes, we do, my father agreed, approaching our group. We made terrible assumptions and we treated you poorly based on those assumptions. We had no right to judge you, Victoria added, her voice shaking. And we definitely had no right to publicly humiliate you at your own birthday party. I'm glad you see that now, I said. But why didn't you correct us? Bradley asked, joining the conversation. Why didn't you tell us we were wrong about your situation? Because I wanted to see how you'd treat someone you thought was unsuccessful, I replied. I wanted to know if my family would support me and love me regardless of my financial status. And we failed that test completely, my mother said, tears in her eyes. Yes, you did. David looked confused. Wait, what test? What are you all talking about? Before you arrived, I explained, my family was in the process of cutting me off from future family events because they thought I was a failure who was embarrassing them. David's expression shifted from confusion to anger. They what? It's okay, I said quickly. They know better now. No, it's not okay, David said firmly, turning to face my family. Alexis is one of the most brilliant, generous, hardworking people I've ever met. She built a company from nothing, she's created hundreds of jobs, she's donated millions to charity, and she's planning to give away even more through the foundation. He shook his head in disbelief. And you were ready to cut her off because she wore jeans to a party? We made a mistake, my father said quietly. A terrible mistake. You made multiple mistakes, David corrected. You made assumptions about her based on superficial observations. You treated her poorly because you thought she wasn't successful. And you publicly humiliated her instead of supporting her. David, I said, they understand now. Do they? He asked, still angry. Because I'm having trouble understanding how anyone could spend 5 minutes with Alexis and not realize she's extraordinary. Victoria stepped forward. You're right to be angry with us. We don't deserve Alexis's forgiveness, but we're hoping she'll give us a chance to do better. That depends, I said. Are you sorry because you hurt my feelings, or are you sorry because you discovered I'm wealthy? We're sorry because we hurt you, my mother said immediately. We're sorry because we failed to see your worth. We're sorry because we let our prejudices and assumptions override our love for you. And, Victoria added, we're sorry because we almost lost the chance to really know you because we were too busy judging you. I looked around at my family's faces, seeing genuine remorse and understanding. Okay, I said finally. I accept your apology. But I need you all to understand that success comes in many forms, and wealth doesn't determine someone's worth or character. We understand, my father said. And we want to do better. Good, I said. Because I'd like my family to actually know who I am, not just what I've accomplished. David smiled for the first time since learning about the earlier confrontation. Does this mean we can eat cake now? Because I've been looking forward to birthday cake all day. As the evening wound down, I found myself having real conversations with my family for the first time in years. They asked genuine questions about my work, my goals, and my life. They listened to my answers without judgment or assumptions. The other guests, meanwhile, had largely returned to their own conversations, though several made a point of congratulating me on Phoenix's success and expressing interest in learning more about our services. Alexis, Victoria said as we prepared to leave, I have one more question. What's that? The clothes you're wearing tonight, are they really from a discount store? I laughed. Actually, the sweater is cashmere from Italy, the jeans are custom-made, and the flats are handcrafted in Spain. The whole outfit probably costs more than most people's monthly rent. Victoria stared at me. But they look so normal. That's the point, I said. Good quality doesn't have to scream for attention. I have so much to learn, she said, shaking her head. We all do, I replied. But that's what makes life interesting. As David and I walked to our cars, he shook his head in amazement. Your family is intense, he said. They're learning, I replied. Tonight was a good start. Are you going to tell them about the international expansion plans? Maybe next time, I said. I think they've had enough surprises for one birthday. Fair enough. But Alexis. Yeah. Next year we're having your birthday party at the Phoenix offices. I want to see their faces when they realize the building is ours. I laughed, getting into my car, a modest sedan that happened to be one of the safest and most reliable vehicles ever made. As I drove home to my comfortable but unassuming apartment, I reflected on the evening. My family had learned valuable lessons about assumptions, respect, and the difference between success and the performance of success. But most importantly, they'd learned that the most successful people are often the ones who don't need to prove it to anyone. The next morning I woke up to a text from Victoria. Coffee today? I want to learn more about the foundation you're starting. And I promised to dress down. I smiled and typed back, yes to coffee. No need to dress down. Just be yourself. 3 months later, Victoria joined Phoenix Technologies as our Director of Community Outreach, helping to design and implement our foundation's programs. She turned out to have a brilliant mind for organizing community initiatives and a genuine passion for educational equity. Bradley, humbled by his assumptions, asked for advice about transitioning from finance to technology consulting. I connected him with a startup that needed someone with his background, and he's thriving in a role that actually utilizes his skills. My parents started asking better questions and making fewer assumptions, not just about me but about everyone in their lives. And David? He still shows up to family events in jeans and sneakers, armed with endless enthusiasm for explaining our latest projects to anyone who'll listen. Sometimes the best birthday gift isn't something you receive. It's the opportunity to show people who you really are and watch them rise to meet you there.